host, Kevin Berrier, and welcome to 5 Dubs Marketing Pros, where we highlight awesome brands and the stories behind them, and maybe just maybe geek out on all things marketing. All right, friends, so let's get started. So today we're going to be changing it up a bit. We're going to be talking about an important turn of events that can have some major impacts in many different areas, including the digital marketing world. But don't worry, I still have 2 fellow digital marketing geeks with me today from an awesome brand to chat all about it. What event am I referring to? I'm referring to the antitrust ruling against Google made earlier this month. So today I brought in 2 max level mages in the digital marketing world, Ben Bouslog and Sam Rahimi of Adcellerant, to talk about what happened, how it could impact the search marketing and optimization landscape, and what businesses can do now to best position themselves to adjust or pivot their marketing strategy if necessary. So welcome, friends.
Thanks a lot, Kevin.
Awesome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So we're going to geek out a little bit today. So I want to first, for those that don't know, I kind of want to, I want to set the stage of kind of what's going on, and then we're going to talk all about what it means. So after years, it seems, of investigation on August 5th, but a few weeks ago, the United States DOJ ruled against Google in what's being called a historic lawsuit, finding that Google violated antitrust laws for its anti-competitive practices in search and advertising. Google, of course, has appealed, and they have some strong arguments. But in the meantime, the courts have scheduled a remedy hearing to determine what the appropriate consequences will be for Google. But I think it's safe to say this isn't exactly a traffic violation. So, there really is no standard sentence here, and it's, the overall case landscape is pretty complex when you look at it. So Ben, in the simplest terms that you can, talk to me exactly about, what exactly is happening with Google right now and this antitrust ruling.
This is actually really interesting because it's not the first time a massive technology company has been in a antitrust ruling before. Microsoft actually did this, and they were within an antitrust ruling before. I think it was back the late 90s, early 2000s, specifically tied to how they were trying to monopolize, office products on computers. So with Google in particular, this antitrust ruling is about the government and several states that are accusing Google of, essentially using its power and its authority to unfairly dominate the online search and advertising markets. Obviously, it feels like the internet is Google's sandbox, and we just have to play by their rules. This argument specifically is saying that Google has made unfair deals with companies like Apple and Samsung and others to make sure that their search engine was the default search engine on their devices, which just makes it hard for these other search engines to compete. You hear about other search engines like, just recently, Microsoft Ads. There's another one I just heard of recently. Ecosia and DuckDuckGo is one that you might have heard of too. But basically, they're saying that Google's used their position to create a monopoly and that it's illegal. The United States is a capitalistic market. We need to be able to, have healthy competition, and Google's really owning it right now. So they want to make sure that they're making it fair for everybody else.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's these big, big tech kind of temper tantruming in the big tech world in Silicon Valley of, you need to make it a fair marketplace for us to. It's interesting to be a fly on the wall to see that. And, you mentioned, this isn't the first time that big tech has been pointed at in this way, and actually Google, like you said, Microsoft, and earlier in the 90s. So, there are a lot of similarities, I think. But, Sam, if we were to take kind of what happened to Microsoft back in, it was like the mid to late 90s, putting Explorer as the default search engine within Microsoft browsers. Technologically, the landscape was different back then. So now we're at 2024, and Google, Google's getting their finger pointed at and ruled against right now. Sam, talk to me a little bit about what you see as some of the similarities now as it relates to like the very same thing that happened in the past, but you know, also some differences. You know, how does it compare to like the previous antitrust actions against big tech?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there are definitely some comparisons as you just look at kind of the overall ruling. When you have monopoly or monopolization, it kind of requires two showings, and those are going to be obviously the entity has some kind of monopolistic power, which I think 90 to 90, 93, 94% market share, search share was cited. So that is obviously quite significant. And then also to add to that, you have kind of maintained or attained that monopoly through kind of these exclusionary tactics, which are definitely cited as well. So that's where you're getting the comparison to kind of what Microsoft was doing back in the day. I mean, structurally, it's kind of the same thing. Now, people could say that is a kind of a capitalist strategic move, right, to kind of block the competitors out. But when you do it at that level of market share, it becomes a little bit more of a touchy subject for many of those, who are particularly trying to make their way up in the search market.
Yeah, no, it's definitely it definitely puts a spotlight on you when you're playing at that level. And with Google, well, with all a lot of big tech having global reach, and with AI coming into the fold and what that looks like within search engines. I mean, the potential impact of just AI development plays a very big, but I think ambiguous role a little bit, because AI is just
Sure.
it's kind of shrouded in ambiguity. So awesome. Well, thank you to that. I think that sets a great stage for the part I'm most excited about. I want to talk about the what ifs, right? So the ruling has been made. Google has appealed. What that typically means within the United States judicial system is they're going to drag it for a while. And what a while means, it could be years, right, on what's going on. But I think, during that time, back channel, negotiations start happening between the parties, and, some will concede here and some will concede there. So what we're going to be talking about next, I think we need to set the stage of this is going to be very kind of theoretical based on the limited information that we have now. And most likely what we think is going to happen is not going to happen, right? That seems to be the, Einstein's rule there. So talk to me about, talk to me a little bit about, let's start from just what this could mean for businesses within, the advertising and marketing and strategy side. Because when you're looking at it, Google Ads will be impacted. Google Ads Network, or Google Display Network, excuse me, is going to be impacted. The way that consumers search and what that means, will probably be impacted. It's a big deal in the marketing world. Ben, talk to me a little bit about, well, let's all have this discussion. Ben, why don't you start though? Talk to me a little bit about how you see this impacting, or what this could mean for businesses as they're looking at their advertising and marketing strategies in the short term, and then what could happen moving forward.
Yeah, you know what? It's really interesting thinking about this with the short term versus long term things. In the short term, you're not going to see any major significant changes. Google will continue doing kind of what they're doing right now while they're figuring out exactly what's going to happen in the future too. So, there's not going to be anything major that we need to worry about, but, it does mean we need to start considering how we're going to be, approaching advertising in particular. People like us at Adcellerant, we need to look at how this is going to, change regulatory compliance. We need to be following certain rules that we might start expecting, purely because, we need to protect ourselves now. We need to insulate ourselves now, and that's all the big tech companies. There's going to be new innovation, new advertising opportunities. As we can see it today, there's all sorts of new channels and ways to advertise. For businesses, they need to ask their partners, their media company partners, their agency partners, to help prepare for them. Business owners in particular, they're spending 6, sometimes 7 days a week running their business. This isn't something that they should have to worry about. So it's the partners that really need to take this into serious consideration, who are running a lot of their advertising. So what I see is it comes down to probably 3 or 4 major things. First off, there's going to be increased competition and diversification, meaning there's going to be a shift in not all budgets, but partial budgets moving to other platforms like your DuckDuckGo's or your Bing. You'll also see potential reduction in advertising costs. That sounds nice, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to mean we're going to spend less money. It just means we're, spending less per unit in certain advertising sectors. And then lastly, there's going to be changes in SEO and content strategies. And I think this is a good time to kind of shift it over to Sam, because this is a lot of where his expertise is. SEO really thrives out of Google right now, but we see all these, generative AI and AI platforms. They're not just pulling SEO and content from Google. They're pulling it from all these different platforms, all these other search engines as well. So those are the things that are going to start changing that these guys can start thinking about. But I definitely hand it off to Sam to see what that SEO shift might look like too.
Yeah, and I'm happy to speak to SEO. I mean, broadly, I think that, kind of outside just SEO, I feel like there's, it really is obviously going to depend on kind of where this lands. I think, as you said, Kevin, we could be sitting here for years, kind of spouting off possibilities of what could occur here. But I would expect that, as we kind of already alluded to, it's not going to happen immediately. I think anytime we hear these types of rulings or these types of bigger shifts, and there's been a lot of them with AI, it kind of causes a little bit of a stir. But should it actually change kind of the day-to-day of how we manage our businesses? That's a pretty debatable topic. I mean, outside of that, and actually, Ben, real quick to your point about potentially reducing advertising costs, I would agree that if there was some type of kind of business remedy that had to occur on Google's side, it is possible that cost could go down. But also, too, depending on what this, where this ruling ultimately lands, could Google's efficiencies go down, therefore costs go up for the end user, right? It really could go in either direction. So it's tough to speculate, one way or another.
Yeah, and as you're looking at like all of the different variables that exist within the search marketing world, right? Whether it's optimization or marketing, data privacy comes into play as this is moving around. I look at like Perplexity is an amazing, I guess you would call it a search engine. It is a search engine, AI powered search engine. Sure. And I could see Google being vulnerable right now. That's when the lions come out and they start making moves. And how will Perplexity leverage this? And how will Microsoft, who's probably the one sitting amongst the kings at the top of the mountain, how will they leverage this as well? What do you, Sam, what do you think if you were Bill Gates right now? Let's think about that. Or if you were Bill Gates, what would you be doing right now? How would you play this to further Microsoft's position where they're not the number one search engine, but they're putting big money towards Bing. Copilot's going to have a play. They got in bed with OpenAI. They're making moves. They want Bing to they want to increase their market share. What do you think they may do to help increase their market share given what's going on right now with Google?
Yeah, it's a phenomenal question. First off, if I were Bill Gates, I'd probably be sitting on an island or a yacht somewhere. But in terms of this component to it, I think it's absolutely there's a lot of ways that they could pivot to kind of take advantage here. Now, when we really look at this, we have to again recognize that we're talking about a 93 to 94% market share. To actually have a sizable impact on that is going to be a significant challenge. And also, too, Bill Gates and Microsoft are going to have to also deal with, as you just alluded to, all the other competitors that are kind of surrounding them. If I were them, I would probably kind of triple down on my marketing budget between search and advertising. Outside of that, I feel like they're already very well positioned with the AI search component and all that they've already been working on. This just kind of opens that door a little bit further for them. So, it's going to be exciting to see what kind of moves that they make. But again, it really just depends on what this ruling pans out to.
Yeah. So let's say, we're going to imagine right now, we're going to say the ruling goes through and the appeal doesn't, right? And there's this monumental decision that will be looked upon for any future subsequent antitrust and monopoly decisions that are made within just the United States federal judicial system. Ben, talk to me a little bit about this. Goes through. What could this mean? Because so 93% market, right? It's like 93, 94%. I mean, so there's a massive amount of people on the planet, or even just, let's say, United States, because this is the ruling in the US, for those that are using Google as consumers in the US, what could change for them, right? Because you'd have to think, to lose market share, the user experience and user interface behind Google would have to change for the worse, right? What do you think could happen?
You know what? I don't think that we should necessarily think about how it could change the worse. It's more of an opportunity of just how it could change in general, right? I think about, when we all downloaded Facebook and we have this app and it's really cool, and then the update comes and you're like, oh my gosh, the icons are at the top and now they're at the bottom of the screen. Like, how annoying is that? It took us, 2 days to get used to it?
I hold a grudge. Took me about a month.
Yeah. So, I mean, things are bound to happen, but we're also adaptable, right? And so whatever floats your boat, you want to go in the path of least resistance. If you like something a certain way, each user, each individual, they're going to have their own preferences. I think a lot of us have a love-hate relationship with Google, and it's probably leaning towards a little bit more of a hate relationship. But at the same time, not everything is perfect. There's times when you're using Microsoft, platforms, and they're grinding your gears a little bit. So it's tough to sit here and say what people can do to prepare for those things. But I think we just need to be open and amendable to how are we going to diversify our usage, even as a business owner. How are we going to diversify our budgets, and then how are we going to reevaluate what's going to work for us? You have to make sure that not just within advertising we're A/B testing, but as a user, how do I use ChatGPT versus Copilot, right? How are we going to make sure that we know how to use all these things, and which one do we like to use more? So at the end of the day, it comes down to really, what do I prefer? Which app do I prefer clicking on my phone? What makes it easier for me? Because especially as Americans and human nature in general, as technology has evolved, I would rather do something in one click than 2 clicks.
Oh, 100%. We one thing that technology has trained consumers to be is to live in micro moments, right? Like, so and provide options. And there are so many options out there. I mean, we see it in AI, we see it in search engines, we see it everywhere. So what I'm hearing is, the impact to the consumer, Google's probably going to make as much effort as they possibly can to minimize the impact, the user experience, to maintain that market share. So it sounds like Google's still in a great position, right? They have the means, resources, and motivation to make this as seamless as possible. Should they lose an appeal and this ultimately goes through, I mean, there's a way, right? Sounds like there's a way. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, there's definitely a way. It's not going to be easy. They've got a lot of people that are going to create an uphill battle for them. But as you mentioned, they've got the means, they've got the technologies, they've got the, guts behind it as well, even to say, what, we have the girth in the market, we can go and kind of do whatever we want here. And that's how they've looked at it for a long time. That's why this ruling came out in the first place. They wanted to tell Google, stop thinking you can do whatever you're doing, because you're literally blocking out every other potential player in the market.
It does feel, I will say, that the momentum has kind of shifted with some of these antitrust monopolization cases in the last 4 or 5 years or so. I mean, we see them with Facebook and Amazon and Apple, and they're just seemingly sprouting up. It's just because this one, I think, was just such a significant ruling in the last however 10 plus years that it's taking kind of the focus here.
Yeah, and I think a lot as the GDPR continues to be more and more forefront, and so GDPR, for those, general data protection regulation, right? So I mean, it's, when it comes into data privacy is a growing concern. So it sounds like this is, for consumers, this is a good thing. It also sounds like for businesses, this could be a good opportunity if they understand what's going on and are attuned enough to their marketing. So I want to, so now we know what it is, like what's happened, what has happened now. We've had some fun thinking about like, okay, well, what could happen within the landscape, if things were to roll against Google's favor. So, let's talk about, so what could businesses do now, for the possibility of like a change, due to an ultimate ruling? Who wants to take that one?
I'd be happy to kind of talk about that a little bit. We've touched on it a few times already. Diversifying their ad platforms, making sure that they're on Google, they're on Bing, they're on DuckDuckGo if that's a place where they need to make sure they're showing up as well. Reevaluating their SEO strategies, ensuring that they're able to be found in all the right ways. They're following the best practices, and it's not just best practices of Google; it's everybody's best practices now, right? Other things, though, that might feel like we're getting into a little bit more of a hairy conversation here is monitoring the legal and regulatory developments of these things. At the end of the day, you have to make sure that you kind of cover your own butt, right? And if these guys are not staying educated, they're not making sure that they're doing it the right way, they could end up in hot water. And that's why it's important to have partners that keep them at the forefront of those ideas as well. And then lastly, just testing things out. Make sure you have that first-party data strategy. Google's, they've no longer given us this so-called cookieless future, but, we've all done a good job of figuring out what a cookieless future could do for us and being able to lean into those as well so that you're not just focused on what a cookied audience looks like, but hey, let's look at what our first-party data can do, because first-party data is also a really, really strong thing to take advantage of as well. So those are pretty, I'd say, a variety of hard things to do and easy things to do in terms of preparing themselves for it and what they can expect.
So I think so that's so the cookieless future, right? Which is I still think it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Though Google has kind of backstepped a little bit on the timeline. Sam, talk to me a little bit about, like, because I agree, first party and zero party data will always reign supreme over third party. It's cleaner. It's a bit more precise. Not saying it's a weird area. I don't want to dilute the value of third party data, but the less removed, right, the less layers of the onion, a little more potent of data. So, Sam, talk to me a little bit about what you are seeing in terms of that first party versus third party data. Does this have a play, in what's going to happen within that kind of data hierarchy, and what do businesses need to know about that?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of echo a little bit of what Ben said. I think that especially in the SMB space, when you get these small businesses, you're focused on the business, right? You're focused on kind of the day-to-day operations, and you tend to take a step away from marketing tech, and just kind of maybe tech in general, right? The roofer isn't necessarily going to be privy to even what first-party data means, right? So I think the first thing that absolutely needs to occur is a brushing up of kind of this terminology, and getting a little bit more focused on understanding where things are shifting towards. Because I would also kind of use your statement there, Kevin, is it's not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. It's going to be necessary, I think, at some point in the near future for every business owner to have some kind of first-party collection strategy. And what I have found in the day-to-day is that people are not truly aware of what that should be, what it should be comprised of, or how to go about doing it, with regulations in mind. So I think, I think it's really a matter of kind of understanding your own industry against that first-party data collection and what that actually can look like for you, and what the repository of that looks like, and the usage of that data, of course, can look like, and just making sure you understand kind of the vertical specific requirements of that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So as we're looking, so let me see if I can pack that up. So, cause there's a lot that businesses can do, right? In positioning themselves. But I think right now, if I were to ask, like, what's one immediate thing businesses could do? Right now, it sounds like under the immediate that they could do today is get informed. Get informed and get engaged with what's going on within these channels that you may be spending, a sizable amount of money advertising in. If you're not going and looking and seeing how your campaign's doing, shame on you. Give us a call. That's what the we's of us in the world. MDDC, Adcellerant, that's what we do. We take a look at how campaigns are running and we stay abreast of what's going on. But I want to look at also from the audience side of, other marketers that may not be, that may be kind of just getting into the fold, those that are going out and selling advertising and marketing to businesses. What are some things that they need to know? Is it the same? Is it obviously they need to stay informed, but there's probably a bit more of a detailed nuance and layer to that. But for those that are going out and want to educate audiences, beyond what we've all talked about today, and this has been great feedback, what advice would you give to other marketers out there and in terms of how they can position themselves to serve their clients the best that they can?
I would say, remember, kind of back to the first part, data is king in general. We have all these companies out here. I even think of your MasterCards and your Visas. I don't know if everybody realizes this. They make way more money off of selling data than they make off of the actual transactions that they run every single day, right? So data is king there. So when these marketers are talking with their customers and their communities, make sure that those customers and communities are collecting data. Make sure that they understand who their customers are. Make sure that they know who the next customer is going to be. And lean into that data, right? I mean, we all talk about making data-driven decisions as much as possible. All right, if I make data-driven decisions not to go to the gym every day, but it's because I don't want to lose weight, right? There's a data-driven decision right there. So if you think about it, they're not just being a thought leader. They're not just being a advertising specialist. They're making sure that those businesses are kind of insulating themselves from what the future might have as well. So that's one piece that they could do. Another piece they could do is just think about how they're diversifying their own client base too. I see a lot of agencies and marketers out there that say, hey, I'm only going to work with roofers. I'm only going to work with dentists. I'm only going to work with these guys. From my perspective, what I see there is that they're really siloing themselves and just almost being ignorant to what else is out there that they could use in terms of tribal knowledge to feed into their own campaigns, their own expertise, and things like that. So I would say make sure you're talking to everybody and not just a very, hyper-specific group of individuals. I think those types of things can go a really far way. And then the third piece I would say, get ready to change. Be comfortable being uncomfortable because it's going to happen. And if you're resistant against it, you're just going to be left behind because it's going to happen anyways. You pushing back is not going to mean it's not going to happen. So as long as you stay in the forefront of that and get comfortable accepting that kind of change and being ready to make a pivot when it does all come down, that might be one of the best things that you can do to kind of support your own customers.
Yeah. So I love it. And I super love the data king. Data is king, right? Because I think a lot of businesses, what I've experienced when I'm working with businesses is that they don't realize the gold mine that they're sitting on in terms of data. They have, there's tons of data that businesses have that are first and zero party data sets that they don't even know exist. And the value behind having that data, it's not a matter of, you're not going to put a line out the door and around the corner with that data set, but that first party data set can really help you drive making educated decisions as you're exploring third party data sets, right? As you're scaling out your marketing and doubling down. Sam, what do you think? Anything you want to add on that end?
Yeah, I would add that. First off, amazing point of from a marketing perspective, kind of diversifying your customer base. I think that everybody needs to at least kind of delve into that to some point. I would add, and maybe slightly biased because I'm an SEO at heart, is to think about first off a holistic marketing strategy. We tend to get a little bit fascinated by some of the more attractive marketing tools that are out there, the creepier things that are out there, right? The little more targeted ad buying platforms, which is all well and good, and we should absolutely be exploring those and absolutely testing those. That's probably one recommendation I'll give you. But make sure you have something to fall back on. I will give you the example of COVID. When COVID came around, a lot of people said, well, I can't afford this budget or that budget that's going into Google, that's going into Facebook, and they shut them off. Well, the fallback plan wasn't there either because they hadn't had a content strategy. There was no SEO strategy. There was no kind of organic component to their web presence or their digital presence. And that a lot, unfortunately let them to fall flat and obviously create a competitive disadvantage for themselves. So I'd say kind of keep holistic, always be trying and testing new things.
Well, yeah, and I think, and so I disagree about they didn't have a fallback strategy. The fallback strategy was email, and then unfortunately in COVID, we leave it to us marketers to just use and abuse, the tactics we have in hand. So then we just rattled the whole email ecosystem, and unsubscribe rates went through the roof, right? So it's like so. So I agree 100%. Like always having an omni-channel strategy where you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. That's what programmatic display is, right? A full programmatic display strategy versus the Google Display Network. If you're putting all of your eggs in one basket, well, if that basket starts to fray, eggs are going to fall out. So, I think probably, the most important piece is, make sure you're diversifying. And in doing that, a byproduct is preparing yourself for these unknown variables that will come to be. Ben, what do you got?
I was going to say, if we remember back when the economy collapsed back in, 2007, 2008, and even back in the 80s as well, when it happened, you think about the advertisers that kept advertising, their revenues kept going up, right? So even during COVID, they were trying to mimic those types of things to kind of safeguard themselves from the economy collapsing or COVID having such an impact on people being able to drive to businesses, go to businesses, get those things. I think it was back in the 80s, Pizza Hut increased their advertising budget. They were able to diversify even more. And I think it was McDonald's that pulled back on their budget, and then they lost a ton of revenue from it. Pizza Hut's revenue went through the roof because they're like, don't worry, you guys. We're here with you. We've got easily affordable meals. McDonald's had affordable meals too, right? But their revenues went down because they did not stay in front of those people. So even when these types of things happen, don't let it scare you. Don't say, "Oh, I'm going to pull back because these things are freaking me out right now." You got to stay consistent with it, right? I mean, it all lives and dies with consistency. If there's one product that I would say that they should continue to focus on, it's probably SEO, right? Because if anytime we need, want, or wish for anything, what are we doing? We're going to Google. We're going to go to whatever search engines out there that we're going to be most comfortable with. And SEO is what's going to help drive that. Even with AI, ChatGPT, Copilot, all these other ones, I don't think a lot of people realize they get all their content from SEO on search engines.
100%. Perplexity. I use Perplexity.
Yeah.
Oh man, I've sold my soul to Perplexity. I'm a geek for AI, and when I started diving into Perplexity, I was like, man, this is awesome. And their sources are great. They're by and large very reputable source, and it's transparent and things like that. It's interesting as you're talking, like this really feels like the stock market. It's almost like, creating your marketing plan is like day trading, right? Those that pull back in the stock market usually, will not see the long gains. So, doubling down, this could be a huge opportunity depending how this pans out for businesses to really, in diversifying, to gain more market share against your competition that isn't seeing it through that lens. That sounds about right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah. So, when you're, so for businesses listening out there, when you're ready to diversify and do it right, give us a call. We'll handle it for you so you can keep doing the thing that you need to do, which is, growing your business. It's amazing how it all works together when, you have the right team, right?
Teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Teamwork makes the dream work, in the words of Snoop Dogg. I love it. Well, I think this has been great. my goal today was to get the what it is, why it matters, and what can you do to best your position for businesses. And I think we've hit all three of those. Sam, Ben, is there anything that we missed here that you want to make sure gets out there in terms of, how to inform businesses, based on what's going on right now?
Make sure you're working with credible people. Right?
Agreed.
Referrals are obviously a great idea. You don't want to get information or misinformation from certain sources. I think that could be one of the most incredible things that you can do, is just to make sure that you're finding or spending the time to find the right people and not something that's going to create some sort of disenchanting experience for you.
Yeah, and I would only add test, and retest. Always be open to the new technologies. Always be open to that change, as Ben was putting before. I mean, it's an ever-changing landscape. It doesn't tend to happen as fast as these rulings and articles tend to pop out. But it is important. So maintain that presence, that focus.
Test, and retest. You nerd, you. That's music to my ears. I love it. I love it. Well, this has been great. I want to thank you both so much for taking the time. I know you two it's times few and far between in your world, so taking the time to help us educate the businesses out there and those that, other marketers, those in our industry that need to know this. I really appreciate the time. For everyone listening, thank you so much. Hopefully you got something out of this. And, if you haven't, like and subscribe to all of our social channels, 5Dubs. You can go to 5-dubs.com to see what's going on in our world. And, Ben, Sam, Adcellerant.com. Yeah, that's where you go to find out what's going on with Adcellerant. Adcellerant is doing awesome things. They jumped on the cookieless, the what ifs on the cookieless future. And I've never seen an agency as prepared, as Adcellerant was. So gold standard agency. Sam, Ben, you two are gold standard as in what you do. Thank you so much for taking the time.
We really appreciate
Likewise,
you
Kevin.
having us, Kevin, and always appreciate the conversations. We'll look forward to the next time we can meet in person, too.
We're going to. You're becoming a regular on here. Sam, you're going to join that club, too, hopefully. I hope. I love geeking out over things like this. Thank you so much. And for everyone that's listening, thank you for taking the time. And till next time, see ya.
There you go.
5Dubs Marketing Pros is hosted by me, Kevin Berrier. Our executive producer is MDDC Executive Director Rebecca Snyder. Post-production by Caroline Pecora. Our theme music is by Azulu Studio. A special thank you to our guests for being with us. You can find 5Dubs and 5Dubs Marketing Pros on Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts.